Alrighty, so if you are watching this, you are either an expecting couple embarking on your first child, which is a journey all on its own, or you are someone who is grading this assignment. And whatever case it is, you are both about to hear about the genesis of the brain inside of the womb. So let's go ahead and get started. I have my notes here. Let's get into the conversation. So, the brain is made up of nervous tissue, specifically neurons. Neurons connect to each other in order to send electrical signals to each other and relay messages throughout the brain. The brain itself has different centers that all control different aspects of the brain itself. So, like the cerebellum, for example, controls a lot of the more complicated aspects like emotions and a lot of like motor control, a lot of the senses. The hindbrain, for example, controls a lot of like the just regulatory stuff, so homeostasis and balance, that sort of thing. A lot of like nocturnal, whether like when you fall asleep. It's not really the point though. Let's talk about this, the actual gestational period and the development of the brain. So in weeks 1 to 4, the neural plate forms. It's a very, very rudimentary form of the brain. Looks kind of like a flat sheet, kind of like a maxi pad from the images that were shown, but that's roughly the shape of it. From there, it forms into the embryonic coil, which it begins to kind of round out a little bit, and then it turns into the neural groove. Now, the neural groove then forms into the neural tube, and once it gets into that tube form, it starts to delineate itself. So it forms the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain, and then finally the spinal cord. So you have the forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain, and the spinal cord. Like I said earlier, the forebrain or the front brain will eventually turn into the cerebral cortex. The midbrain will turn into the kind of like a relay station. So it's a space within the brain itself that allows it to send signals elsewhere in the brain. The hindbrain takes care of basic actions, and the spinal cord is a way for the brain to get signals out throughout the rest of the body. So from weeks 4 to 8, the embryo grows rapidly, and 2 hemispheres emerge within the front brain, or what is going to be the cerebral cortex. Also during this time, there's an astounding amount of neurogenesis with the creation of new neurons and the genesis of so many more glial cells, which eventually turn into neurons in the brain and help make more and more connections as time goes on. Weeks 8 to 26, the cerebral cortex covers the midbrain. So originally it goes front brain, which turns into the cerebral cortex, the midbrain, then the hindbrain. So the cerebral cortex kind of covers it, so that the hindbrain is more on the inside now. From weeks 26 to 28, there is a major structural change. So during this time, the cortex itself changes and starts to get kind of wrinkly. Now that's not super crucial in this period, but it revs up for something in the next week period, which is the very end. So in weeks 28 to 30, and so on and so forth until birth, let me see what I have. The hills and valleys inside the brain form. So if you look at a brain, you'll notice there's a lot of different grooves and rises. It almost looks reminiscent of a canyon of sorts, like a very complicated canyon. Those hills and valleys are called gyri and sulci, and they essentially create a flexible neural network for the brain to be, essentially. So it allows the brain itself to connect better with itself and just react better to its environment, whether the actual brain is damaged or the environment's outside the brain. So like the environment that we have to navigate ourselves through. Let's see what else we have here. talking a little bit about glial cells. So glial cells move away from other cells they come from. So during the glial cells neurogenesis, they sprout off, and during starting at weeks 4 through 8, they begin to spread out rapidly. And during this time too, if there are pathways that are unnecessary or just aren't working, there's something called synaptic pruning, where those glial cells will actually they'll die off or be removed by other cells within the brain. But essentially that is the development of the brain within the womb and during the gestational period. Yeah, so I hope that was informational. I hope you enjoyed this video of me blundering through my notes, and thank you for watching. Have a great day.